Welcome to REST, which stands for Resiliency and Empowerment Seminar today. I am your host, Susan Gans, and I am the founder of Gans Strategic Solutions, where we operate at the intersection of human behavior and business. For more information, please go to www.gansstrategicsolutions.com. This show is about hearing from leaders of small and mid-sized businesses as well as nonprofits. We hear about their journeys, their organizations, and very importantly these days, about how they're being resilient. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with Jennifer Gilman. A little bit about Jennifer. She is the president of Gilman Strategic Group, which is a legal recruiting company focused solely on law firm partner placement. Her goal is to help satisfied law firm partners and solo practitioners find their perfect fit at another firm, which can make a dramatic difference in their career and personal satisfaction. Her superpower is being able to tell in 15 minutes whether a law firm partner would be happier changing firms or if their current firm is the best fit. She is a recovering lawyer herself. She knows how busy law firms are and the partners are, and how overwhelming starting the process of finding a better fit might sound. So her group is committed to taking on as much of the legwork as possible and being there every step of the way to make the process less time-consuming and more enjoyable. Jennifer received her law degree from NYU School of Law and her undergraduate degree from Brandeis as magna cum laude graduate. After practicing law for 12 years, she realized that legal recruiting combined her two passions of law and matchmaking. She worked with a full-service New Jersey legal recruiting firm for 10 years before following her dream and launching Gilman Strategic Group in 2018. Welcome to the show, Jennifer.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. So let's get started. Take us back to the earlier days of your career. How did you get into law? And then talk to us about the transition into having your own law recruiting practice.
Sure. Well, I actually come from a family of lawyers, and I always wanted to be a lawyer. Even when I was a small child, people would say, well, that was a really good argument. One day you're going to be a lawyer. And I knew going into college, that's what I was going to do. So I got the benefit of being able to major in whatever sounded the most interesting. So I was an English major, and I read all those books that everybody always means to read. I specialized in the Victorian novel, and it was wonderful. I really, really enjoyed it. And one of my professors wanted to sponsor me for the PhD program because I did enjoy it and I was very enthusiastic, but I actually really wanted to practice law. So I applied to law school and I went, and I did really enjoy so many of the things about being a lawyer. I started out as a general litigator and had a taste of a lot of different areas of law. And then I met my now husband, who was doing employment law, and it sounded really interesting. So I asked to take on some employment law cases at my firm in the litigation department. And I could see that it was going to be very interesting to me. It's very people oriented. So like on Thanksgiving, when I was working on a big securities litigation, I was trying to explain to my grandmother what it was. It was one successor company was suing another successor company, and we would go to all the depositions. And a lot of times people didn't really remember what happened. Oh, that's the former people. They're not here anymore or whatever. And she's like, well, why are they suing? I said, well, they said the disclosure was inadequate. So the stock price went up, but not quite as much as everybody thought it would go up. And she said, why don't they just move on and do something else? This sounds ridiculous. And after a while, some of the things I was working on were hard to get personally involved in, and we worked such crazy hours. It's hard to work on something until 4 a.m. when you don't feel personally invested. So employment law was really fun because it was about people. You know, there would be somebody suing because he thought he should be promoted to vice president. And the company was like, I don't understand. You've been on probation for 30 days already. You haven't been on time once the whole time you've worked here. You almost got fired a handful of times, and now we should make you a vice president. Or somebody would get mad, oh, well, how come she got promoted to CFO? I've been here longer. Well, she has an accounting degree and you don't have a high school diploma, so you're not really the one that's qualified for that job. It's not a matter of how many years you worked at the company. So it was always a human interest. There was something, and the company had a point of view, and the person suing had a point of view, and it made sense why they would both feel angry about the situation, and there would need to be some lawyers involved. And the next Thanksgiving, when I was describing to my grandmother the case that I was working on, she finally was like, well, that's worth suing over, I could say.
So it's all about your grandmother and having her understand what you do.
Pretty much all about my grandmother, whose husband was actually the first lawyer in our family. He came from an immigrant family, and he actually worked at a factory during the day and put himself through law school at night, which I found out later on in life and thought was really cool. He was a very successful local real estate lawyer who a lot of times didn't actually get paid by his clients because he felt bad. So they would barter for something that they could exchange, like dry cleaning or a meal at their restaurant or something like that. And he always knew everybody in town because of that. But his wife knew what lawyers did. She just thought that some lawyers caused more lawsuits than were necessary. And when I finally got into employment law, she could understand why everybody wanted to pursue those cases. So it was interesting. But it was very human interest. I got to know my clients really well. They would call for advice a lot. We called that advice and counsel. And it was fun because sometimes they would call with a question, and with my answer to that question, I could prevent a very big problem from happening. So we could prevent litigation by just being a resource for them to reach out to when they were making an employment decision. And, so we could really, really be helpful. And I did enjoy it very much, but the hours were a little bit punishing. I don't think I had a full night's sleep in years and years. And I had a bunch of trials in a row where I was the second person on the trial. So I wasn't the Perry Mason one doing the cross-examination. That was so exciting. I was writing the motions in between and pulling out the documents for exhibits and, sitting at the table, scribbling notes, but not getting to do the really cool part. So it was hard to give up months of sleep over that. And then my husband and I started a family, and even the idea of a part-time at a law firm wasn't going to fit in with the way that I wanted to actually see my child, because part-time was 4 days a week, which usually meant that every court conference was scheduled for the fifth day and every client meeting was scheduled for the fifth day. And 4 days a week aren't 9 to 5. They're more like 9 to 2 in the morning. And it's a little bit hard to see a young child. So I actually went in-house with a client for a while, which was really nice, but I still didn't see my daughter while she was awake because we moved out to the suburbs to have more space for her, and the commute got longer, and I would leave before she was awake and I would come back after she was asleep, and that wasn't really what I wanted to do. So I met with a recruiter to try and get a job in New Jersey where we were. I thought if I could cut down on the commute and find something that was a little more manageable, I could still continue to work in employment law, which I was really enjoying. And I made it all the way to the fourth round of interviews for a labor and employment position at a Japanese pharmaceutical company. And I got a call from a different recruiter to apply for the same job. And I said, oh, no, I'm going to go meet with the GC next week, the general counsel. I think I might get this job. I'm really excited. And he said, oh, my guy only did one round and they didn't have him come back. I should have sent you instead. Why don't I take you to lunch and I'll tell you about all the other positions I'm working on just in case this isn't the one that works out for you. So, all right, fine. And I went and I had lunch with him. And the whole time during lunch, he was just trying to convince me to work for him and be a recruiter. And it wasn't the first time I heard that. Every time recruiters would call me in the past to tell me about a law job, and they'd always say, you know what, we have a job here. You would really like it. And I would say, but I really like being an employment lawyer. I think it's fascinating and interesting and challenging. And that job you were talking about, that sounded interesting, but I don't want to leave law now. But he said, you've got to give it a try. It's flexible and you can see your kids and you can still, have some control over your career and talk to all the lawyers, and all this stuff. And he said, just give me 2 weeks. I said, well, I want this job at the Japanese pharmaceutical company. He said, well, if you don't get it, you have to promise me you'll give me 2 weeks. So we made a deal that he wasn't going to call them and tank it for me. But they got down to 3 people and they selected somebody else. And so I went to work with Jim for my 2 weeks, and it never felt like a job. It felt like I was getting paid to talk on the phone and make friends and take people to lunch. And instead of writing a 75-page summary judgment brief, I could write a 2-page write-up of a candidate. And instead of waiting 6 months for the judge, I got instant gratification. If it was a really great candidate, 10 minutes later, the firm would reach out to me and they would want to know about it. And it was fun. There were there was a learning curve because I didn't have a sales background, but I was working with somebody who was very experienced, and he taught me a lot, and it was very nice.
Fantastic. It's been quite a journey. So what has been the biggest adjustment for you, because you've gone from working for somebody else now to having your own firm? Tell us about that transition.
Yeah, well, it's actually a kind of a big transition. So I worked for this one legal recruiting agency for just about 10 years, and we still are in contact. There are no hard feelings or anything, but during the time that I was there, my kids were very little and I needed it to be flexible. I needed somebody else to be running things so that I could have off when I had school events that I had to go to or babysitting issues or something like that. But then the kids got a little bit older and I got a lot more focused, and I was much more interested in working with the law firm partners after a while. They kind of ran like a mini law firm inside of a bigger law firm. They had their own clients and their own way of doing things and their own marketing, and they were so entrepreneurial and really interesting, and they were so successful. I could admire what they were doing. But even though they were so successful and they had these great big books of business, a lot of times they were dissatisfied and they thought there was no way out. And I didn't have, a $5 million book of business when I was still practicing law, but I knew how they could find another job and they didn't. And so I had a useful skill that they respected too. And it was really interesting to get to know some of these people who were sometimes senior to me, sometimes just way more successful at client development than I was, and see that, they were kind of stuck and I could help unstick them. And I got really interested in only working with the partners. And the guy I was working with was a little bit frustrated because his business was very much associate driven and we were law firm facing. So we would wait for a law firm to call us and say what they needed. Oh, we need a 4th-year real estate associate, a 2nd-year litigation associate, something like that. And then we would all scurry around looking for that person. And when we got on the phone with a candidate, we were trying to convince them to go to a particular opening that we were trying to fill. There was a slot and we were trying to tell them that was the one for them. And I would start talking with them and this doesn't sound like it's for you, but how about this other thing? And I would always be frustrating to the guy who ran it because it's like, just get them to go to the one that we have and forget it. And he thought that the partner stuff, it takes a very long time to put together those deals. It could be 6 months is about an average, and the associate things were a lot faster. And I guess as a business owner, it just seemed riskier to let somebody focus so much on deals that sometimes didn't come about at the end. But it was also getting a little awkward for me because we worked with half the firms in New Jersey and we stole associates from the other half. So then I was working with partners and I was trying to find their dream firm. And sometimes the dream firm was one that I had just taken, 4 or 5 associates from last month. And I was like, oh, hi, it's me again. Would you like to hire this person? So I really wanted to brand and advertise and do more attraction-based marketing instead of cold calling. And they didn't want the company to be known for partner search. They wanted it to be known for what they were doing more of. So I spun off a little more than 2 years ago. We had our 2-year anniversary, October 29th. And I started my own thing, and it's a lot different. I was an English major in college. I worked for big law firms. I worked for somebody else's company. So before I got started, I wanted to learn a little bit more about business and marketing. So I actually signed up for a coaching program, which has been really valuable to me. It's a lot of business and marketing, and it's also some mindset, because I think now I'm totally on board with about 90% of it is how confident you are that you can do it. And when I walk into a meeting, just knowing that I have a valuable service to offer, some partners who are very unhappy where they are, and I can dramatically change their lives, it makes me feel confident having that meeting. And I think a lot more of them close that way.
That's fantastic, Jennifer. What quite a journey to having your own firm and knowing how you wanted to shape it and who you wanted to be a hero to, if I could borrow some language from your coaching program. Was really important to you, and to start to attract those opportunities. So good for you. What would you say to your younger self if you had to give her advice, knowing the perspective that you have now?
I would say that none of the things that you do earlier in life are really a waste of time. They all just combine into the experience that you use to do the next thing. So when I was thinking about leaving law, I was thinking, well, I went through law school and I developed an expertise in employment law, and it's so wasteful to just stop and do something else. But I really think my employment law background is exceedingly helpful in my job now. I do a lot of employment counseling for the lawyers that I work with. And thankfully, I can draft my own contracts with the firms that they go to, and I can review, and I can, so having my legal background and having it be in employment law, it's almost like a human resources kind of background, has been very helpful to me. So it wasn't a waste. It was really enjoyable. I liked it when I did it. I like what I do now better, but that doesn't make those years wasted. They were just the years that got me to where I am now.
It was a learning journey.
I think so. And, running a company is really interesting. I hired my first full-time employee in September, and our second employee just came on this month. So I have a full-time operations manager who was a virtual assistant for just a few hours at a time, and then more hours, and then more hours, and became my online sort of operations manager, and still work with other clients until we just had so much for her to do that I wanted her to be able to focus on this company. So we hired her full time, and we just brought on a junior recruiter because there are too many lawyers for me to be the only one who speaks to them. So we've got some exciting plans going forward. We're going to get her trained and acclimated and comfortable first, but I'm pretty sure we're going to need some more of her. So hopefully by this time next year, we'll have a little bit more staff.
Fantastic. So tell us about how you've been resilient during this time with your business. I imagine you used to have a lot of face-to-face meetings with law firms, and law firms tend to be more conservative and traditional. So tell us about that.
Sure. So I used to spend about half of my time doing in-person networking events during the week, because a lot of this is the law firm partners I work with are a little bit, we call them risk adverse. They're just nervous about a lot of things, and they're a little bit conservative, and maybe they better just stay where they are because it's not that bad. And what if they try and go somewhere else and it's worse? Or what if someone finds out? So they generally aren't comfortable talking with me and giving me all of the information I need until we get to know each other a little. And doing that in-person networking was good because they saw me a bunch of times and they thought, well, she seems okay and she seems honest and smart, or whatever it was that made them feel comfortable. And I did all of my meetings with candidates in person always, and usually lengthy meetings in person. We would do maybe a screening one, and then we would do a 3-hour lunch or dinner where we get to know each other really well and make a list of firms. And sometimes there were follow-up meetings. And I did do a fair amount of meetings with the firms. I'm not sure. I mean, they would like to bring me in once a year and show me around and talk about what they had done the past year and what their strategy was for growth and what kind of partners they needed. So everything I did was in person. And then thankfully, right before everything shut down in March, I was at a quarterly conference from the coaching program I belong to. And the coach was saying, everyone's going to have to go online because you can't meet in person. Everything's going to close down. And I said, well, I can't do my business online. I guess I'll have to take a little break. And she said, well, they're saying it's going to be 2 weeks, but what if it's 3 weeks or 4 weeks? What if it's 2 months? Do you really want to not do anything for 2 months? It's like, well, no, but I can't do it. I take them to lunch. You can't have lunch on the computer. I can't go to these. What kind of networking is going to be on a computer? I go to these events all the time. And she said, it's really not whether it can happen, it's how. You have to just figure out how. So that was March 9th and 10th. Everything shut down March 13th. And I, scrambled to get groceries and things and get my kids set up on their school. But then I opened a Zoom account. And thankfully I had Erin to work with, and she helped me with the tech. And we figured out how to make an invitation and send it around and tell everybody that we were going to try some online networking so everybody could, keep from getting bored and keep their businesses moving forward, even if we were in a lockdown. We started March 24th. That was our first event. And on Monday, November 16th, we're going to have our 100th event. Wow. So we really got out there before, I was glad I had somebody to help with the tech part. And it was amazing how fast we got everything together. We started with 2 a week. We added a third one pretty fast. So we run 3 online networking events every week. And we have a really great group of people. We have a LinkedIn group of almost 400. And then we have almost 500 who are signed up to get our emails. And we have, some people come every single time, and some people come once now and once 6 months from now. So it's always a new group of people. On any given one, we usually have, 25 to 50 people, not like hundreds, but we're trying to get it so that we have at least 100 faces on our 100th event, because we thought it would be fun to all have a toast to how we kept networking, even when people said it couldn't be done. And a lot of us have done business together. We've made actual friends. I feel like I know these people really well, even though some of them I've never met in person. And we've managed to leverage the technology that's available to feel like we're still meeting with people. I think it's definitely possible. And I've joined up with a whole bunch of other networking events that are online. I think you really could go to 15 events a day if you wanted to. And I was able to move my practice online too. So I am able to talk with candidates and talk with clients using Zoom instead of using an in-person meeting. And I've placed partners who have not met the people that they're working with, who are working virtually after meeting on Zoom and talking on the phone, and everything's going fine. I'm in the midst of placing a couple of partners who wanted to have the last round meeting be a socially distanced in-person meeting because they just felt like that was their comfort level, and we did that. And, there are all different ways of doing it, but the firms, even though law firms are usually very conservative, the law firms really got out in front of the technology, and whether they use Zoom or another platform, they continued doing business and they continued with their hiring strategies, which was nice for me.
Absolutely. And the video technology has been so freeing. I mean, I've been using it for a couple of years now with some global work. And when you give somebody that certainty that, hey, I've used this technology and it's the next best thing that we're going to have, at least for the foreseeable future, people start to get comfortable. And after a couple of years in this 2D world, I've learned to figure out where do I have commonality with people, and how can we come together on our differences but come together on our commonality. So it's been an interesting ride, like you've been having, in terms of connecting this way. And congratulations on your upcoming 100th events.
Thank you. And actually, I should point out that this has actually given me an advantage. In the beginning, before COVID started, I was trying to open some offices in South Florida for some clients that I had worked for in New Jersey before. And, I was planning a trip, and I was going to go to some BNI events and some bar association events and be on the ground for a week or so. But during COVID, right at the beginning, I was able to join a networking group of South Florida attorneys, and I meet with them every Wednesday, and I feel like we're all really good friends. They've referred me to people. I've met with some of them about moving. I've done more business in South Florida during the pandemic than I did before.
That's fantastic. What a great story. So let's talk about empowerment. How do you empower yourself? How do you empower others?
Well, I think that what really helped me in, I think, the mindset part of the coaching was a lot of it. She has a saying that what people think of you is none of your business. And I think that's really freeing. You don't have to worry what anyone thinks. So when I post too much on LinkedIn and it's annoying, so don't look at it. What if I go to another event and you just saw me yesterday? All right, it's not my problem. It's your problem. And I used to worry. I used to overthink things a little bit. I wanted to be more active on LinkedIn, but I didn't know how to do it, or what to say, or what to post, or was it too much or not enough, or was it the right time of day? And it's all about imperfect action and just trying something. People are much more willing to forgive you. It's not such an issue. And I also think that looking at it from the perspective of, I have a valuable service to offer. So I felt a little funny when I first started working with partners, because when I was still practicing law, I was not a rainmaker. I didn't have a whole bunch of my own clients. I was good at my work. I worked a lot of hours, and I think I did a good job, but I wouldn't have been one of my candidates because I didn't have a big portable book of business. So I felt like, well, how could I be telling them what to do if I was never in their place? But what I hear from my candidates that I've worked with and placed, and candidates I'm working with now, is they know how to do that part, but they're stuck. They don't know how to find another job. And they're so thankful that somebody can come and tell them what's possible and what's unrealistic and what they can expect. And really, I have a 5-step process that I use, and they like the certainty of knowing, okay, these are the steps that I need to follow. Jen's going to help me with it. She's going to be here to help prep me and debrief me when it's time for the interviews, help negotiate the offers, help me decide where to go, help me transition over there. And it makes them feel like it's possible, because they're so busy and stressed out already. It seems overwhelming to even start. And I feel like I was able to, this might be too personal to say about her, but my first full-time employee, when we were going through the mechanics of bringing her on, we were talking about payroll and insurance and this and that. And I found out for the first time that she didn't have health insurance. And I was able to get a group plan for my company so that it's possible for her to have health insurance. And I just felt like everybody should have health insurance. And I'm in a position where I can make that happen for somebody else. And I'm in a position where I can offer that benefit to the rest of the people who join my company. And, I'm very fortunate. My husband has health insurance for our family through his job, but not everybody is in that position. And it makes them able to, follow something that they're really interested in doing and not have to only choose a job based on the benefits.
Absolutely. And that's wonderful that even as a small business, you are able to provide those other benefits that people are looking for. So, Jennifer, what would you like people to remember about our conversation today?
I'd like them to remember that sometimes people who seem to have it all together and people that you might be even admiring or a little bit jealous of, are they have their own issues. So there are a lot of huge rainmaker law firm partners who are really feeling upset about their jobs, and thankfully I'm able to help make a dramatic difference for them. And I would also like to tell people that if you're ever thinking that you might be interested in starting your own business instead of being part of somebody else's, you should go for it, because there are a lot of resources out there for entrepreneurs and small businesses. There's a lot of help out there, but it's so much fun to be able to implement exactly the vision that you have in your head and not have to get anyone else's permission.
I love that. So I'm going to repeat some of what you said, which is, listen, if you think that there are people that are perfect and have it all, they might behind the scenes be having their own issues. It's not the highlight reel that you see on LinkedIn and Facebook. And Jennifer further inspires us to say that if you are inclined to be an entrepreneur, to go after your dreams and to go for it, because now more than ever, there are certainly plenty of resources out there for that. So Jennifer, how can people find you? Because we want them to find you.
Well, I'm on LinkedIn. It's Jennifer Gilman, Law Firm Matchmaker. I'm the only one who's a law firm matchmaker, I promise. And they can also take a look at our website. It's gilmanstrategicgroup.com, and Gilman has 2 L's.
Okay, I am going to repeat that. So on LinkedIn, it's Jennifer Gilman Law Firm Matchmaker. And then online, it's gilmanstrategicgroup.com, and Gilman with 2 L's, Gillman. Jennifer, such a wonderful to spend time talking with you today. I so appreciate you. I appreciate our audience and take Jennifer's advice to heart around you following your dreams and your passions, whether it's an entrepreneur or in your day job, to do that. And we all look forward into the next conversation.